The labor movement knows about neighbors. They know how to provide support for food banks. And I want to thank you for the support you've given in the past, in some of the rough times we've had, and especially the rough times right now. And Andrew mentioned those statistics. And, you know, he said that statistic about northwestern Ontario. In the city of Thunder Bay alone, it's 44.6%. When you average it out with the region, it comes a little lower because they're not, and we're running, in comparison to the rest of the province, this is not a race you want to win. We're running, the rest of the province, about 3% of the people use food banks. We're having about 6% of our population in Thunder Bay using food banks. And 40% of those are kids, as he says. We're also serving, through the food banks, about 18,000 meals in the month of March. That's quite incredible. Now, the source of food we get from a number of different locations, but one of them is from Southern Ontario. And I just want to talk to you about that because everybody's talked about, and if up here we know forestry is a big thing, it's closed down. I have a son-in-law who's struggling with his family, and it's not easy. But in Southern Ontario, where we get our food from corporate donations, several companies have closed down. Cadbury Schweppes, Cangrow, Kraft, Hershey's factories, they've closed their facilities and they're not going to open again. Now, that's hard for us in the food business. When we're trying to deliver food, it's getting harder for us to get food. An example of a plant closure that's impacted us and all the food banks across the province is the Campbell's soup factory in Listowel. This has been a fixture of that community for over 3/4 of a century, and it closed in March of this year. This plant is responsible for manufacturing and distributing Campbell's private label contracts in Canada, and as such ships significant volume of food each year to the food banks across Ontario. We could depend on 1 or 2 pallets. Every truck that came in was Campbell's soup. Ontario food banks have received direct benefit from this plant. Over the past 3 years, Campbell's Listowel was among the top donors of food banks in Canada. It's the same thing with some of the people who have been laid off their jobs in Thunder Bay. They were some of the contributors to food banks, and now we're seeing them come through the door and asking for help. So some of the people we relied on before, they're needing help, and we need to help them. Last year, we delivered over $500,000 worth of food to the food banks in this area, and we're pretty pleased with that, and we're going to try to keep that up. Andrew mentioned the EI rates. I want to let you know just in numbers alone what that means. That means there's 6,390 people, 6,390 people on EI in this community. It means, as I said before, 6,455 people looking for hampers in our northwestern Ontario. Now this is going to be difficult for us to meet those needs. We need your help. We need your donations of money, your donations of food. But I'm going to tell you something we're going to need your help with too, and we're going to try to make this change gradually. We want to make this change gradually. Just a little story. In every grocery store in town, there's cans there that have ripped labels and they don't go onto the shelf. There's cans that have dints that don't go on the shelf. And we call that reclaimed food, or it's stuff that the grocers actually send back and get some money back for that food. Okay? So in Winnipeg, when they get a dented can, it gets sent into this depot. It gets the grocer gets credit for it, gets the money back, and then that can goes to the food banks in Winnipeg. In Toronto, the same thing. One of those cans, the grocer gets credit, it goes back to the food banks in Toronto. I want to tell you what happens with a can in Thunder Bay, because this bothers me. When there is reclaim in Thunder Bay, it goes to Winnipeg or Toronto to be graded, and the grocers in town get credit for it. It never finds its way back to Thunder Bay. It's used in the food banks in those towns. We need to get the food that is here, graded here, the grocers get credit for it, and we keep the food in town for food banks, so that we get equal treatment for the people who we're trying to serve in our community. And it's a very simple thing. Let me tell you what that translates in. One firm in town has made this transition, and I'm very pleased to tell you that Zellers and their 3 stores in town are now giving us their reclaim, and they're getting credit for that, and the food is staying in town. That means we're getting a pallet of food a week from them. And that means over a period of a year, we will get 2 complete semi-truckloads of food from Zellers. Isn't that incredible? Now, if we could get the same cooperation as we move ahead with some of the other grocers in town, and with one of the biggest ones with Walmart, you know, if we could get the same cooperation, we would be getting more transports, in terms, maybe twice as many transports as we get from Toronto, just by getting that reclaimed food. And the interesting thing about that food is, it's a variety of food. When we get food out of Toronto, it's all one type of food or another type of food, and sometimes it's not as nutritious as we would like. But if we get this reclaimed food, some of it is very nutritious, some of it has protein and fiber in it that we would like to have. So we're going to try to move in this direction, and we're going to see what happens. We're going to talk to the grocery stores. We haven't gone, in all fairness to them, we haven't gone and specifically laid this out. But as we go ahead, we're going to be asking for public support in this as we move ahead with this whole idea of getting the reclaim in Thunder Bay to stay in Thunder Bay, so the people in Thunder Bay who are hungry will have that food. So I thank you very much for the opportunity of talking to you. I thank you for the support of the labor movement and all that you do for us. And I just thank you for being so concerned about your neighbors. Thank you very much.